I spoke with him a short time ago. Treasurer, thank you for your time. How long have you budgeted for the $500 million a week assistance that this package is going to continue in New South Wales?
Well, we're obviously hoping, Tracy, like you are and all your viewers, that the New South Wales health authorities can get on top of this outbreak as quickly as possible. But as long as people in New South Wales are subject to these harsh restrictions and as long as they are subject to these lockdowns, then we will be there to support them. And today's announcement is very significant. It's a partnership with the New South Wales government with a cash flow boost, which will provide between $1,500 and up to $10,000 a week to businesses with a turnover of less than $50 million. And it will also provide significant support to families, to households, to individual workers with $600 a week payments and $375 a week payments, depending on how many hours a week has been lost due to these restrictions.
It'll be a very welcome package, but I guess the point of my question is, how long are you going to be providing it for? Because Delta is a very slippery strain of COVID, and if we can't wrestle it under control, we're going to be in lockdown until we're all vaccinated, aren't we?
Well, I wouldn't have that assumption because, as you know, this is an outbreak in New South Wales, but we can get on top of that outbreak, and I've got confidence that the health authorities will. So what we are hoping to do is get on top of this outbreak in New South Wales and bring the economy back to where it was, which was strengthening very fast, indeed faster than even the Reserve Bank and Treasury had expected.
New South Wales, it looks like, is going to have to do more to get on top of this outbreak because the numbers are bumping around, but they're not going down. Do you expect that this assistance will allow the New South Wales Premier to lock down more businesses? Because as long as people can leave home, as long as they've got a reason to, they will, won't they?
Well, I think the New South Wales Premier has been very clear in her message to the people across the state, which is follow the health advice, and we'll support the businesses and the families get to the other side of this crisis, as we have done from day one of COVID-19.
Sure, but you know the point of my question. As long as shops can stay open, they will stay open and people will go shopping. And there has been speculation that with more assistance, the New South Wales government will now shut down more businesses. Would you endorse that?
I know from my own experience in Victoria, people were able to get their takeaway meals or their takeaway coffees or obviously go down to the local supermarket. There will be certain businesses that need to remain open for the community to function, but there are others which are going to be less obvious that do need to remain open, and they'll be the ones, no doubt, that the New South Wales government will make decisions about in coming days and weeks.
Because can we go back to your experience in Victoria? Because, you know, you were very vocal about lockdowns in Victoria last year. You're clearly not a fan of them. And you gave the Victorian Premier a fair touch-up, and you didn't wait too many weeks before you started to give him a touch-up. So does all this lockdown support stick in your craw a bit?
What happened in Victoria and what's happened in New South Wales and other states are chalk and cheese. As you know, tragically, more than 800 people have lost their lives in Victoria. More than 90% of the deaths that occurred across the country were in Victoria. And they had a massive quarantine failure last year, which led to the lengthy lockdown. And then they had an inquiry to determine who was responsible and who took the decision around those failures, and nobody was, and nobody did. And so I was critical about that process and about those outcomes. But at the same time, we are, at the federal government, providing extensive support, not just to New South Wales, but to Victoria as well.
This outbreak in New South Wales started with an airport international flight crew limo driver who wasn't vaccinated. So that was a failure. How long will you give the New South Wales Premier before you start asking her to open up again?
Well, again, this is a much more contagious, much more dangerous strain with the Delta strain. And what we've announced today is a package of measures which will enable the businesses and the households to get through this crisis. So we've got great confidence in the resilience of the economy, but we also understand that this recent lockdown is very, very tough.
If the federal government had taken a punt on Pfizer vaccine a year ago and got at the front of the queue and ordered 40 million doses back in July, when countries like the UK and the US and Japan and Europe were lining up for Pfizer vaccines, we might have had 50 to 60% of our population vaccinated by now and we wouldn't be locking down. I mean, that's the truth of it, isn't it?
Well, Tracy, to be fair, we did adopt a policy where we would secure different types of vaccines, but we were manufacturing here in Australia the AstraZeneca vaccine, and that vaccine has had a few challenges. Now, the good news is that the vaccine rollout has really been speeding up, and more than a third of the eligible Australian population has received the jab, and we've got more Pfizer vaccines coming on board very shortly, and that will be important as the rollout gains pace, and we recognise that this is very much a Team Australia moment.
I understand everything you say. I recognise everything that you say, but we're still, it's too slow. We're behind the 8 ball, aren't we? And if we'd been in front of it, we mightn't have been locking down now.
I recognise we've got challenges, and that's why we're putting all the resources into the vaccine rollout, and that's why we're putting all the resources into helping businesses and families get through the latest lockdown. But Australia is better positioned on both the health and the economic front than other countries around the world.
I'm still not sure that's 100% an answer to my question, but I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for your time, Treasurer.
All the very best, Tracy.